Welcome to All of Us Are Lost, a Lost Rewatch podcast looking back at the 20th anniversary of Lost since it was first on our screens. I'm Andy and I'm joined by Kat. How are you doing, Kat?
I'm good. And yourself?
Yeah, not bad. Busy week, just the usual, and good getting to catch up back again on the island and seeing things that we'll get into it, but I thought happened a lot later on. So interesting to chat about.
It's interesting how the memory works because I think I had a very similar experience with certain things that were revealed in these two episodes that I thought were towards the end of the season, but apparently not. Apparently, we've got a lot more in these first 20 odd episodes still to come.
Yeah. What we're going to be discussing this week is another two episodes, this episode 3 and 4. I suppose technically they are episode 3 and 4. Pilot was split into two. It was kind of one episode, but different enough from each other. Episode 3 is Tabula Rasa. I think I've said that correctly. And episode 4 is Walkabout. So start off with, obviously, episode 3, directed by Jack Bender. So this is the first one that JJ stepped away from. Jack Bender being, I think at this point he'd done Child's Play 3, and then he went on to do Mr. Mercedes, a couple of episodes of Game of Thrones. I think he's got From now as well, which we've maybe touched on before, with Harold Perrineau. And yeah, I think you don't really notice any difference. I don't think Jack Bender seems to do quite a few of the episodes throughout the series, but this one, the kind of main focus for is Kate, her past and her motives are certainly kind of called into question throughout. The kind of basis for this episode is the mystery surrounding Kate, what's happening with the marshal that's still got, well, he's not got a piece of shrapnel sticking out of him anymore. It's been fixed, but he's not responding well to his kind of treatment. Jack trying to save him. What were your thoughts on the kind of rewatch of this one?
Well, this is obviously the first episode in the series where we get our first proper flashback. This was, the big Lost format is for a couple of seasons, every episode was flashing back for one character and kind of getting to know them before they got on the plane. And, so Kate is that first character that we get the flashbacks for. And I thought that we knew more about. I thought when this episode happened, I thought firstly this episode was later on and that it went further, but this was very much, Jack and Hurley discover that Kate is the one who was in the handcuffs on the airplane. She's, the one that was sitting with this guy. He's a US Marshal. They don't know her crime, and then we flash back, and we still don't know the crime. It's very much just her being apprehended. So I thought basically all of Kate was revealed in an episode, but it didn't. Obviously, again, the memory's playing tricks. So
Yeah.
I can't quite remember exactly what her crime is, and I guess I'm just going to have to wait a little bit longer to remember that.
Yeah. It was very. I did enjoy this episode, but it did feel like. I think this still felt slightly like a filler episode because, as you said, there's a flashback for Kate, but you barely see anything. I think you see maybe 2 days of her life, and certainly when we compare it to what we're going to talk about in the episode of Walkabout, there's a lot less revelation. The big revelation is she's the one that the marshal's been transporting back to the States. That comes quite early on, so you would think maybe the flashbacks would give a bit more of an insight, but I suppose it's kind of shown her humanity more than anything else because she's done something. You don't know fully what it is, but she's shown that she still has a level of empathy, and in her flashback, she's involved in an accident. Instead of escaping, she chooses to save the person she's with, and it causes her to get captured. So it was interesting that way, but it just felt maybe a bit underserved, I think, which is something that maybe be said for Kate throughout, I think, when we go on.
I mean, it's interesting that the title of the episode is Tabula Rasa, which translates to clean slate, which I feel is very much what Kate is trying to do on the island. You know, she very much wants
Mm.
to forget her past and move forwards and move on. And I guess that's something that the rest of the islanders have also got to kind of deal with as well now. It's like there's this new normal life before doesn't exist. They kind of, certain pockets know about this signal and that help's not going to come anytime soon, so they've all just got to kind of like crack on with things.
Mm. And it's interesting that the group who went and searched and found the signal have made the choice not to tell um, the other survivors, but Kate still confides in Jack. There is that already the element of trust between those two, despite Jack now knowing at this point that she is the fugitive. She's not told him, so she clearly trusts him. While there is the barrier between the two of them from Jack's point of view on her not being as open with him and
Mm.
in terms of everything, and um, the fact that they've decided not to tell the group again, something I can't remember. I'll need to stop saying that because there's lots I can't remember. But if that's going to have any kind of repercussions later on in the show, whether it's series one or even further. We mentioned it in the last episode. You kind of touched on it with Hurley, and there is still that element of him being the kind of conduit for the viewers. He is literally questioning everything. Why is this mugshot here? Why she got a gun now? Why is but he's still very much got that aspect of him, aspect of him to the show. Do you think it's still working as it's going, or are we getting trusted a bit more as we're moving on?
He's definitely still sort of providing that role, but he is then sort of stepping outside of himself, away from the audience in a way, because I feel that as an audience, we do trust Kate because we are seeing all of these things that that she's helping, and she's trying to stop panic by keeping certain things secrets and that. But Hurley knows, he's seeing this mugshot and he's terrified of Kate now, which I think is quite amusing that this she's been nothing but lovely to him, but he's within that exchange that they have, he is clearly very nervous and very terrified of her. So I kind of think that he's still providing those questions, but he is now kind of getting to have some of his own personality and sort of seeing where how long he keeps it secret, for Jack and for Kate before it kind of all comes out.
Hmm. And one of his main worries as well is dinosaurs, which Jack kind of tries to
Yes.
tries to put him at ease at. I mean, it's a reasonable question. You don't know what this on this island. Why Jack's so dismissive of it? I don't know, but it's he's got that kind of lightheartedness to him, and I think again, jumping ahead of myself a wee bit, I think especially in episode 4, there's some interactions with Hurley that I really enjoyed. Um, the kind of elephant on the island at this point is the marshal who's dying slowly, in pain, clearly causing a lot of distress. Kate is kind of hanging about, questioning Jack. Obviously, with Jack now knowing about her briefly about some of her past. Um, Sawyer is someone that feels that maybe should be put out his misery. Same with Saeed. They all seem to try and have that influence on Jack, who's still trying to be the doctor, despite everything pointing to it's not going to work.
Mm.
The I think having the marshal is kind of floating in and out of consciousness. He's mentioning things that Kate will do anything to save herself, basically, which is maybe contradictory to what we've seen. And he is also attempted to kill her at some point. And again, because we're not given that full insight into what she's actually done, and I genuinely can't remember. Um, it's it's interesting because we are still on her side, despite knowing that she was in his custody, and she's attempted to save him as well to an extent on the plane crash.
Yeah, it's a very sort of interesting dynamic because and it's this constant like she'll do anything she can to get away. Dude, they're trapped in the middle of an island. Like she can't go anywhere. Like I think
Yeah.
it's okay. Obviously he's suffering with like fever and everything, but yeah, I think obviously Jack is still in doctor mode, as you say, and it's that whole thing with, he's telling Hurley, yeah, he'll be fine to the next minute it's no, actually, like we're giving him drugs for an ear infection. Like that's not going to
Mm.
touch what he's got. And then it leads to this sort of great scene on the wreckage of Jack's hunting for medication and Sawyer's on their looting, and it's kind of I think it's like the first proper scene of Jack and Sawyer on their own together, and we've
Mm.
already kind of got this conflict between them as like the good man and the bad man. Like Sawyer says, you're still living in the civilized world, I'm here living in the wild, and it's a nice sort of tease for where their relationship's going to go, because I think up until this point it's been Sawyer and Saeed that have been locking heads,
Mm.
and now suddenly Jack's also an antagonist for Sawyer as well, which I again sort of like not quite remembering the timeline properly. Just it really is from their first interaction. Sawyer just does not like Jack.
Mm. And we're getting little snippets of still we're not on board with Sawyer at this minute because he comes across as racist and misogynistic, and he doesn't come across at all as a good person. A realist, maybe, in terms of when he's looting, he's there, he's getting cigarettes, magazines, and booze. He's not like he's nicking money from people because I think he's understood that at this point it's irrelevant. But yeah, there's the racism still as a kind of undercurrent that we are. It still pushes us away from him. He's very he's horrible towards sides still. I can't remember the exact word they used for him, but it was in episode 2, I think, where he called him Al Jazeera or something. Or yeah, he's unlikable. Well played by Josh Holloway, but incredibly
Yeah.
unlikable at this moment. And yeah, it's an interesting first dynamic between the two of them. Um, Once we get to the point of a kind of point of no return, if you will, with the agent, we're led to believe, and again, because of Hurley's worries about Kate, she's entered to speak with him. Kate and Marshall Edward Mars, his name is, are just having quite a frank conversation where it's basically he's asking if he's going to die. And she doesn't seem too concerned about him. She's not concerned about him going to cause any issues for her. And they are able to have a fairly frank conversation. Um, and you get led to believe that Kate's possibly the one that's killed him because you hear a gunshot and she walks out. Hurley is obviously, as we mentioned, terrified of her. But the murderer, if you will, turns out to be Sawyer. This is him trying to do the right thing as he sees. And he fails miserably. The guy ends up dying slowly and horribly anyway because he misses the heart. But it was an interesting choice, I think, to not have Kate be the one because it might have been too obvious and then there's too much suspicion put on her.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it helps with the building Sawyer as well, because as you say, he's following his code, and to him that was the kindest thing to do, but he's gone in all bravado, not really thinking it through, and he's epically failed, and now he's caused even more troubles for this guy. I mean, we haven't really seen much of the marshal. I mean, he obviously causes a massive like car crash in trying to apprehend Kate, and he's been aggressive towards Kate, but boy, that guy's had it rough. He got thrown out of the airplane. He's had shrapnel in him. He's had like sepsis setting in. Now he was about to die, but is now just going to like slowly suffocate because his lungs have been perforated. It's like it's not a nice fate for this poor guy.
Yeah. And having now carried this out and Jack is pretty much left helpless, I think he says that the marshal's going to take hours to die. We don't really that's their last sort of scene with him, isn't it? There's not really anything after that. Like, there's no. Is it? I was wondering if maybe it was suggested that Jack kind of finished them off because there's no going back to him after that, really.
I guess it's that scenario. It's like what's the kindest
Mm,
outcome, and it would probably be to like smother him, and
yeah,
because we definitely don't hear him screaming anymore, which I'm sure Shannon is thrilled about because she's just like, can he just die already, like before anybody else has even got to that juncture, just because he's making a bit too much noise for her. So she's
yeah,
still very much the spoiled brat that's on the island, which is you know
mm,
there would be one. So it's interesting to see.
yeah. She's delightful, so it's great. And the episode ends on Jack almost saying to Kate that he's maybe not. He's basically accepting her and said, like you said, I think he even says clean slate, which is in reference to the episode. Whatever happened off the island is irrelevant. We're all in this together, almost sort of thing, and that's a good way of going forward of the two of them building that relationship together.
Yeah, but again, it's that they're together, but you know, so many of the island knows very little about what's actually happening. So it's that
Mm,
kind of forming like a clique within a clique within a clique sort of thing, and
mm,
they found an ally in each other. And I guess from Jack's point of view, he has something on her. So if he needs to play that at any point in the future, he's got that information on her that she doesn't know that he has.
mm. And there is it's not all doom and gloom in this episode. It is maybe seem it, but there is kind of more comedic elements, and we've possibly the first time we properly get a bit more look into Locke as well before the next episode. He's trying to help Walt find Vincent. But at the same time, he's wanting Michael to be the one that's there for Walt. He's obviously seen their relationship from a distance. He seems like a guy that's just in the background watching sinisterly, and because at this point we don't know any of his motives. Um, it sets us up well again for what's coming up next, and a slight element of Michael's well, not a really relationship. He kind of walks in on Soon getting washed, but again, a more light-hearted moment in what does seem to be fairly grim.
Yes. Again, Jin was terrible in this episode. The reason why Sun
Mm,
is, having a wash is because her husband says you were filthy. And it's like, yes, because we're on a desert island. Um, but I think the scene that I really enjoy in this is the episode where you get your first interaction between Charlie and Claire,
mm,
who obviously go on to have quite a strong connection. And it's just a very short scene where just Charlie's like asking about was her husband on the plane, and she's basically saying like no, like this is it's just me and the baby sort of thing. And it gives us a
yeah,
little bit more information about her situation, because again the audience will have been questioning what's this pregnant woman doing on a plane. I mean, I'm pretty sure that she's very on the bubble for being able to fly. um,
mm,
and so just getting a little bit more information out of her via that conversation with Charlie, and just yeah, knowing that they become quite close going forwards, it's quite nice to sort of be able to pinpoint, oh, this is their first conversation.
mm. Yeah. And Charlie's kind of someone that seems to be very socially interactive. Obviously, in the background, he has his drug issues, but no matter any wee cliques that are forming, he seems to be getting his dipping his toe in every one of them. Like he's spoken with Jack, he's spoken with Hurley, he's had slight interaction with Locke at this point when Locke's making the whistle to find Vincent. And he just seems to, yeah, almost like a social butterfly on the island. But again, is there an undercurrent to that? Is there a reason why he's attaching himself to everyone?
I just feel so sorry for him because obviously he expects everybody to know that he's the bass player from Drive Shaft, and so
Yeah.
I wonder if there's just an element of, like, ego stroking where he's like, "The more people I talk to, somebody's gonna recognize me because, I'm super famous," and it's just that
Yeah.
nobody has any clue who he is, which is just I just always feel so sad for him every time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something again coming on to Walkabout. There's another interaction in that level. So I think that'll cover episode 3. We've got a Life After Lost though for Marshall Edward Mars, played by Frederick Lane. I'm not too sure how to pronounce that. So how was him? How was he on exiting this show?
So obviously he's not necessarily a main character within
Mm,
what we've seen with Lost, very much like Greg Runbound being, the pilot in the pilot. And he's continued to find like steady work. He's been in pretty much an episode of most well-known American TV shows that have followed. He had a small role in The Dark Knight Rises. And then, yeah, in terms of TV, he did 4 episodes of Supernatural as Azazel, uh, 2 episodes of Mr. Mercedes, which, given
mm,
there's a shared director between them, kind of makes sense now.
yeah,
3 episodes of Dexter New Blood, which isn't, I mean, it is, it is. And I think his most kind of like prominent thing is he did 7 episodes of American Horror Story Asylum. So that was probably like
right,
his
okay,
next biggest thing. Yeah. Everything else, he's kind of like 1 episode, 2 episodes, a
mm,
supporting role. So he's not become busy mates with JJ like Greg did, but he's
yeah,
he's still very much working and is one of those faces that you see and you recognize, but you can't quite remember where from, and it's because he's pops up in everything, but just not very long.
yeah. Interesting that he was in Asylum. That was when I used to think American Horror Story was good, but that's a whole other podcast. So moving on to episode 4 now, and our Locke centric episode. A man of mystery, pretty much within every episode so far. He's the one in the pilot who explains light and dark to Walt. He he just seems to be a very eccentric figure from the background anyway. And he
Mm.
said he's smiling with the orange peel. He's helped find Vincent, but then he shows again a level of humanity by getting Michael to take Vincent to Walt. Um, and this one is finding out about his background and them also trying to find a food source because they've witnessed some boar in the fuselage of the plane feeding on dead bodies, which is lovely. Um, and it all kind of culminates in what we find out about Locke and a cremation for the unlucky ones, or maybe the lucky ones, depending on how things go for them on the island, the ones that died. Um, how did you find this episode?
I think Walkabout is one of my like favorite episodes just of Lost, just ever.
Mm,
I think just the way that they do the reveal of Locke in that final scene is just so good. Like when the first time you watch it, your jaw hits the floor, and then on a rewatch, you just realize how smart it is because they don't give that away. They're very careful with how they shoot him. He's stuck behind an office desk, or he's sat at a lunch table, or he's, sat on his bed. These are all things that people do, and you don't think anything of. And then that reveal in those final few moments is shocking and also just devastating because on the island, he's this like man of mystery, and people are starting to realize that he has his uses with the hunting that he can do. But then in his old life, he was very much like looked down upon and a joke.
mm,
And it's just kind of sad to see that that's what his life was, and that now everybody else is sad to be on the island, and he's found himself, which is straight away it's like, well, why is this happening to this guy?
mm,
It's just another mystery, isn't it? It's like, how has this happened? And
yeah.
yeah, it's one of my favorites, I think. It's one of the ones that I remembered I didn't
Mm.
necessarily remember where it came, but it's one of the ones that I remember because it was so well done.
Yeah. Yeah, this was another one that I thought was later on. Certainly the reveal that Locke is wheelchair bound in his flashbacks. The first scene you get of him in the flashback is he's on the phone and someone calls him Colonel. They ask if the line's secure, so you maybe do feel that there's sort of shady operations for him. But he's working a desk job. He's looked down upon by a manager who's a lot younger than him, treats him like shit. Real scumbag guy. He was only in it for like 2 minutes, but I really hated him. He's a
We've
proper,
all experienced those bosses as well, haven't we? We've all seen
yeah.
those types of managers and things. So yeah, we're instantly team Locke just by having to deal with that
Mm-hmm.
guy.
Mm-hmm. And I think Terry O'Quinn is fantastic in this because there's such an element of, he manages to portray a sort of stoic nature a lot, but also a helplessness, especially in the phone call to a character we don't see, someone called Helen. It's maybe hinted at that it's his girlfriend, but it's some sort of phone service, not fully explained as to what it is. He's got a fragility there when he's talking to her, and he's bought her a ticket to go on a walkabout around Australia. So connecting yourself to the earth. He mentioned it being his destiny to do this. And that's interesting because now maybe he'll feel vindicated in that because it could be his destiny to be on the island and somehow walk again. Um, we don't find out yet why he's able to do that, but it's very interesting that the whole idea of destiny and being one with something certainly seems to carry on for him throughout this.
It's the fact as well that he doesn't tell anybody. You know, the
Mm,
episode opens with him. You know, we're back at the crash site in the immediate aftermath, and you see his, you know, his feet wriggling, and then he gets up, and then he goes over to help Jack with the marshal. But you know, I kind of feel like if I'd been paralyzed for 4 years, I'd probably be like a little bit more like, oh my god, like what? How, this is, you know, this is a miracle. But he sees what's happening, he realizes what's happening, but then he internalizes and it keeps him to himself. So, you know, he's very much a character that likes to keep his mysteries, you know, and his secrets close to his chest. And that
mm.
is, you know, a further point of intrigue.
Yeah, he's projecting a persona to everyone in the island as well, isn't he? He's got a box full of knives. You can throw a knife with very pinpoint accuracy, and so maybe his kind of catchphrase throughout this is "Don't tell me what I can't do." He says it 2 or 3 times to one to his boss, one to the company that's organising the walkabout in Australia, where they say we can't take you, we can't insure you for this. So he says, "Don't tell me what I can't do." And then once again, after Michael has been knocked over by one of the boar, he then he then storms off himself to catch the boar himself. He wants to be the hunter gatherer that he sees himself as, and he again says, "Don't tell me what I can't do." Um, an interesting part of the last sort of scene for him, not last scene, but the last part in the jungle for him before he comes back with the boar, is he seems to have an encounter with whatever it is that's in the forest. Certainly the way it's shot, it would appear that he has seen it. But again, he keeps it to himself. He gets asked at the cremation ceremony, "Did you see it?" And he says no. So again, what is he up to?
Yeah. Yeah, there's just, I mean, his interactions with Walt as well. Like, you understand why Michael is very reluctant to let his son anywhere near the creepy old man who's like off on his own. He's not doing himself any favors. I feel like, given the knowledge base that he has and the skill set he has, you know, the blade throwing and stuff, he should be an asset, you know, to the island, and he could be beloved. You know, he could rival Jack. You know, he could be the leader that everybody wants, and yet he's much happier to, as you say, sort of like sit on the fringes and people watch and plot. And it is, you know, what's going on, what is he plotting, what is his plan.
Hmm. Um, an interesting aspect I found in this episode, away from the Locke stuff, um, there's a couple of almost sort of side quests, if you will. You have Saeed, who's looking to boost the signal for trying to get a distress signal out with the help of Kate. You have Shannon being her usual self, where Boone suggests that she can't fend for herself, so she sees fending for herself as getting Charlie to do something for her by catching fish. And I think, again, Dominic Monaghan getting in these wee cliques and basically becoming friendly with everyone. He's kind of been besotted with Shannon a wee bit since the start. I think he's followed her a couple of times, and she just totally sees that and uses it. A scene that I really enjoyed in this is the fishing scene between Charlie and, again, Hurley. They, from what I remember, they're going to grow into a closer relationship, and it just seems like a kind of off the cuff moment so far from what we've seen in this. And they're just trying and failing to catch fish in a really strong current. I don't know how easy that is.
Yeah, it's everybody else is, focused, like you said, they're focused on a specific mission, with big stakes and stuff. And, both of these characters have brought, some humor to the piece. We know that Charlie's got like a darker side, but they both have been providing questions for the audience, but also some lighter moments. And yet to finally sort of see them properly have a scene together where they're trying to fish, but they're completely inept, as most of us would be in that situation, is quite nice. It sort of reminds that not everything on this island has to be doom and gloom. There can be some moments of fun, because if it's all just like tears and tantrums, this is going to be a very depressing series.
And the other aspect is up to the kind of finale of the show is the cremation. You have the character in Rose, who Jack had been sitting next in the plane, said he was going to wait till her husband came back from the toilet, and he was in the tail of the plane going to the toilet. Rose is convinced that her husband isn't dead. She says they'll be thinking of us the same way when Jack mentions everyone on that part of the plane is going to be dead. It broke off. There's no way they've survived. There's a slight insight into her thinking Jack also sees someone in a suit, very dapper looking for being stranded on an island, and again someone hiding in the distance. We don't know who that is or why he's seen them. He sees them twice, kind of half hidden behind a bush at one point. He's not very subtle in his approach, but again, layers upon layers of things going on in the background. And on top of that, you have the character of Jack now seems to be the focal point for the whole group. Claire mentions to him that they're going to have a ceremony for the cremation. It's Jack that is the one who says we need to burn the bodies. He's very matter of fact about it. They need this because it'll attract the bulls again, and it's not a good thing to have there. He's the matter of fact side of it. Claire seems to be the more spiritual, or certainly a bit more again empathetic towards the dead. Even Said says, "What about the religion?" And Jack is just like, "Well, I'm a man of science almost." Claire asks him to do the eulogies. He says no. You also then get Boone come up and says, "You should speak to Rose. Why can't you do it?" And Jack, you can see him visibly starting to get a bit pissed off now with everyone coming to him for absolutely everything. Already 4 episodes in.
Yeah, I think what 4 episodes. It's like literally been like 4 days. I think at some point they mentioned that it's been like 4 days, and it's like that thing, of being a parent, isn't it? When like the kid's just like constantly badgering you. So he's got Claire coming up, going, "Look at this book I found. I think we should talk about these people." And then Boone's like, "Oh, that lady over there needs help." And then there's, he's just had to make the decision to, burn all of these dead bodies, which can't be particularly pleasant. He's also burdened by the secrets of the transmission and Kate, and he's just got everybody that can't seem to function without him telling them. And we've all been there. You just want to go and have 5 minutes to yourself, and he just can't get that because he's on an island and he's the one that everybody is drawn to.
Yeah. And now he's seeing ghosts, maybe. Don't know. Something. Men in suits. That can't be a normal thing to see on an island, especially so pristine as that. When a couple of interesting facts I was reading up on this one. Apparently, it was after this episode that ABC announced the rest of the series was going to be shown, because I would assume that they hadn't filmed everything at this point. Um, the viewing figures must have just been so good that they've went, oh, we need to commit to this now. Plus, if I was a studio executive, regardless of money, if I'd been watching along, I'd be, I need to find out what's going on. Just green light it, fuck it, just give me everything. 60 episode series, just budget whatever you want, it's fine.
Paralyzed man can now walk. Like I need to. I can't have that cliffhanger like in my life.
Yeah.
That's just too
And
much.
apparently, so the end or near the end of episode 2, Locke says, do you want me to tell you a secret, Walt? In the pilot, when they wrote that and when it was performed, they didn't know what the secret was going to be. So the whole thing with Locke being paralysed hadn't yet fully come into fruition, according to trivia. But again, these things are up for debate, I assume. But interesting if that was the case, especially with people who have had the criticism of the show that they really didn't know what they were doing. They just kind of winged it and then went and seen what happened and whatever the viewers responded better to.
I will say during the like cremation scene, I get why they burn the wheelchair because they believe that that chair belongs to somebody that's on the fuselage and it should be, it should go with them. But that was very handy, in episode 3, Claire and Charlie were using that to lug suitcases around. Like, you're on a
Mm,
desert island, you've not got many resources, don't get rid of the wheelchair. Um,
yeah.
but then there is this, this really sort of almost emotional scene of Locke watching it burn, seeing this thing that has kept him captive for like the last 4 years and going up in flames. And that is, Kate had a clean slate in episode 3, and this is Locke getting his clean slate here.
Mm, yeah. And it is leaving behind his older life, as you said, like having that clean slate and finding himself at one with the world, if it is that way, at one with the land, I think he says. Um, so I think overall, Walkabout, probably my favourite out of the two. There was elements of episode 3 that I did enjoy, but I think this one just kind of was at a whole other level, as you said, one of your favourite episodes. The character of Locke has been in the background and is kind of at the forefront now, and you want to find out more about him.
It's just when the camera pans back as the tour guide guy gets up from the desk and walks away,
Mm.
and then you see Locke spin around in his wheelchair. That is just one of the greatest, like, what the fuck moments, I think, in television, because it's just so well played and shot up until that point that at no point do you think his secret is that he's paralyzed. I mean, they say, we're not insured to cover you. You think, okay, has he got cancer? Is that why he wants to do this mission? Is he dying? But no, it's much more bizarre than that what's going on. So yeah, it was
Mm.
just, there's a few moments I think throughout Lost that are like this one, but because this is the
Mm.
first one and it's only episode 4, that's why this show went on for as long as it did, because it had this uncanny ability to just completely blindside people.
Mm. And do you think this was obviously we've had the first 3 episodes where there's obviously a lot going on. There's mysteries. You don't know fully what's on the island. You don't know what the noises are coming from the bushes. You don't know why polar bears are there. This is when it seems to delve into that sci-fi element with Locke, because maybe not sci-fi, but certainly the miracles, which we maybe see a bit more of later on, that are at the forefront, and the mysterious guy in the bushes. The mysteries aren't just about people's past and what's on the island. It's also about what is the island, what is the cause of this, what is the reason for it, and it is the spiritualist, the kind of more spiritual Locke that is the one that's brought that out in the show now as well.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, this show is just so many layers. It's firing. There was just so much for everybody. I think, it crossed so many genres, so many interests, and yeah, we're only at the end of the fourth episode and we've had everything that we've had already happen. And I think series one is like 24 episodes. So
Mhm.
we're barely scratching the surface and it's going to get so much weirder.
Yeah, 25 as well. So there's an extra
Oh,
one tacked on.
25 is an extra
One
one.
extra. Double a 3-part finale and a 2-part pilot. So just firing everything out there. It's I can't wait to when next recording and next rewatch for us. So on that note, Kat, where can everyone find you?
So I am at Gizmo Shikari on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and then you can listen to my chaotic podcast with my 5-year-old. We are movies with Mummy, and we're on Spotify, Apple, and various other places.
And you can find me on Twitter at Nowhere Andy and on Instagram. And I'm also writing and doing YouTube interviews for the Geek Show. Find me on there. And till next time, thanks for watching and listening to All of Us Are Lost.